getting that why. And another way, which I'm glad that I mentioned, is like a mental reminder is what is in it for them. Welcome to Loans Elevated, the podcast that brings you the latest industry news, expert interviews, and insightful discussions that will help you stay ahead in this dynamic market. I'm your host, Broch Lassig, and I've spent years in the trenches of the mortgage industry, helping individuals and businesses navigate the complex landscape of real estate financing.
I'm your co-host, TJ Heidenreich, and together we'll cover a wide range of topics, from business strategies that skyrocket your success to mindset and motivation that fuel your growth.
Okay, welcome back to another episode. This week, we are diving into a mindset hack that really is applicable. I use it personally on the team, with my clients, with business partners, and even with my family. So it's a very applicable hack from a mindset perspective. So we'll dive in. This hack is what I refer to as the why behind the what. So Ryan and I were actually chatting last week as we were kind of planning for this one. And the funny story that I came up with, because I was trying to explain to him what I wanted to talk about, he uses the same strategy. He just didn't understand the verbiage of why behind the what. So recently, I restricted screen time for my young kids. And those of you that are parents probably relate heavily to that. It's a challenging thing, especially this day and age, hard thing to do. So my wife and I had to talk with the kids. We're like, hey, we're going to go 2 weeks, no screen time. Of course, they immediately flipped out, and I realized I screwed up. Why? Because I didn't give the why behind the what. So my kids flipping out, and I said, here, come here, buddy. And I did the whole hands and eyes thing. Again, parents will understand this. And I said, listen, bud, I'm not doing this to punish you. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm not bothered by you. But the reality is you are addicted to the screen. And he's like, what do you mean addicted? And I said, well, what I mean is you constantly want to watch screen time, whether it's quality or not quality. You don't even know why you want to watch screen time or what you want to watch. It's just constantly feeding your mind with the screen. And that's an unhealthy habit and unhealthy for your brain. And it's summertime. You should be out playing with your brother, having a good old time. And when I explained the why behind the what, and he realized there was some potential like damage to him and that it was an issue for him and his brain, he captured onto that. He literally, I spoke for maybe 20, 30 seconds. He's like, oh, okay. He walked away. It's now been 2.5 weeks and we're still off the screen, and he practically never asks for it. So one, I think we've accomplished the addiction issue, but the strategy there was I should have started with the why behind the what, because as soon as I gave him that, the stress was over and he just accepted it for what it was. You had an example
what
of that
I
with
think
a client.
of what I think of too is that separates, in my opinion, a boss to a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Because a boss is just going to be the order giver, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just want to know the why behind the instructions they're being given, and it helps them actually become motivated or see the reason why behind the action. Mm-hmm. And it helps people actually
gives them more
realize.
buy-in.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. I mean, and I agree. It is a show of leadership. Really, it kind of boils down to communication, which is one of the biggest leadership skills that you can develop over time is proper communication. But you had an example of something that you went through with a client when you had last week. You were explaining. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. I had to explain this to the client, and then they were totally bought in. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, it's just any of our strategies that we discuss in any of our consultations. I made a shift where, I mean, it makes sense to us, a lot of the strategies we discuss. And so it's easy for us to just be like, hey, this is this, and this is what you should do without any context behind it. And so I mentioned that I recently made a shift to actually start explaining the reason why we advise them to do things a certain way. That way it's not just, hey, this is what you should do with your finances, because naturally people are going to be rejected against that.
They're just going to be,
they're going to be there's friction there.
Ideas.
There's friction there.
Yeah. They just don't accept what you're saying.
Exactly.
If you say, hey, put this much money down and do this with your loan, they're going to be like, well,
what if
why?
I don't want to?
And that doesn't meet my goals.
Yeah.
But if you lead with, hey, so our objective is to help you optimize the mortgage in effort to mitigate financial risks and ultimately over the long run, maximize your wealth. That is our philosophy in the way we got our clients. I want to coach you through how I would recommend you do that. And here's why. So it's kind of like that intro of why this matters. And you just crochet in
gives way
what
more
they're doing.
power to what you're saying
Yeah.
rather than just trying to be a dictator.
100%, 100%. Another example, just to kind of make this point hopefully more clear. So I was meeting with a team member earlier this week, and they had called a client. We just got this application, and they had called a client and said, hey, we got your application. The application had rental income on this property. They owned an investment property, and we were using rental income to qualify. They had rental income on this property, and once we got the actual documents, we realized that that rental income wasn't actually legit. It was new rental income and nightly rental income, or Airbnb type income, with a very short history. So it's not usable immediately. And when he called the client, he just basically said, hey, the stated income was different, and so we can't use that income now, and it affected the debt-to-income ratios. So we're going to get an appraisal on the new house. It's a little bit more expensive, but that appraisal on the new house is going to help us qualify. And it seemed kind of like it was more a what situation. It was what changed, what we're doing, as opposed to why. So we called the client together because the client kind of got a little bit panicked, and we called the client together, and I just shifted very minimally. I mean, I still got the same information across, but just shifted to underscore the why behind what we were doing. So the conversation, instead of explaining what, I called him and I said, hey, so I know you're a little concerned about this rental income situation. I want to tell you, our goal is not only to guide you through this mortgage and get the mortgage done and get you a good deal, but also be the experts in understanding how we get you through this process as seamlessly and streamlined as possible. Part of that is, what do we want to provide to the underwriter to minimize the legwork you're going to have to produce documentation to get you to qualify? So the why is, how am I saving you time? Like, what's in it for them is kind of the why that I'm explaining here. So I said, what we're thinking is the income that you have is a little bit more complicated than we want to deal with, and it's going to be a nightmare for you to document through underwriting, and it's just going to be a headache that's not worth it. So instead, what I think would be a better approach is we just use the rental income. They're buying a new investment. We just use the rental income on this new investment property to offset that payment, and that fixes the debt-to-income ratios, so we don't need any of the rental income from the existing rental properties. We just qualify you with the full payments, and it's going to make a much more streamlined process, way easier, way less documentation from you. Granted, we're going to have to pay the appraiser an extra $150, but not a huge deal with all of the time savings. Yeah. And when I just shifted the framework of the conversation, what's in it for him, within less than 5 minutes, 100%. We were laughing by the end of the call. He wasn't frustrated. And it all took less than 5 minutes, happy client. So getting that why, and another way, which I'm glad that I mentioned, is like a mental reminder, is what is in it for them. And you can navigate through any sort of conflict or any issue that we commonly face in business, but especially like in our worlds, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of emotions. So anyway, that's an extra thought. Do you have any other thoughts on this topic?
No, I mean, I think the concept is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Give the why behind the what, and you're going to have way less issues.
Yeah.
Whether you're serving your clients, you're a leader on a team, running a huge company, you're giving the why behind the what, you're going to have a lot easier time.
Yep. Even your parents and your spouse, it works. So
kids.
Anyway, yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully this was helpful, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for tuning in. For more industry insights, follow us on all platforms at Loans Elevated.
And to get in touch with our team, call or text 801-713-4000 or visit loanselevated.com.